say that this is a defining moment. This is a pivotal moment in the history of our state and the history of the country. Never before we needed to have this kind of discussion than to have now. When we really consider economic condition of our community and we consider the real poor conditions of our people, folks, we have a serious discussion. We have a hearing that was in the month of December that was facilitated by Sir Ron Rice. It was a major hearing centered around what was going on, etc. At the time, we promised that we were going to have 4 town halls. We had the first hall on ML Day, and we provided that information, and it was fantastic. The second town hall is being held today, and we are very, very fortunate to have Roland Martin. If there's anyone in this country that speaks truth to power, it is Roland Martin. Roland is a part of it, is going to come into the state and help expose some facts, some of the issues that we're having in the state of New Jersey that is centered around racial and economic conditions in the. And I want to just state a few facts, kind of get into this, turn it over to Roland. Number 1, in the state of New Jersey, ownership of Black people is only 41% compared to the white population of 76%, one of the largest in the nation. In addition to that, poverty rate of Black people in this state is 15%. When I drive Newark, when I consider Atlantic City, Camden, and Trenton, the condition of Black people are absolutely heartbreaking. Folks, we have to deal with that. We have to that. And to do anything is to make complicit in what's happening with our people. We have a fantastic lineup for today. Roland, our moderator, Roland is going to be hosting and helping to facilitate it. But we have none other than the CEO of the National Urban, Marc Morial. We also have Sir Ron Rice, and he is the leader of the New Jersey Black Legislative Caucus. We have Jacob Walthour. Jacob is the president and CEO of the first African-American asset management company in the state of New Jersey, located in the city of Newark. And then we have Ryan Haygood. Ryan is the New Jersey Institute of Technology, or New Jersey Institute of Justice. He is the president of that institute. So we are very pleased to have these today. I believe that the discussion will get tense. It's going to be tight. We're going to have some sparks really flowing. More importantly, we want you to become a part of what we're going to deal with today. With no further ado, let me take this opportunity to really now bring forward Roland Martin, Unfiltered. Roland, for being with us, and thank you here to really facilitate this. Roland, ladies and gentlemen.
I appreciate it. Glad to have every year for this conversation. The shirt I am wearing is on the front, wears our on the back. It says Black of Cincinnati. A few years ago, I had a chance to speak to the folks in Cincinnati about the agenda, and what they were focused on was getting a piece of the economic pie. Cincinnati, demanding their fair share of the resources. That's really their focus all about. It was important to wear this because we're dealing with, folks. What we're is as critically important is look at the billions spent right now in this country. Look at the billions that are amassed in this country. How much is it actually coming to African Americans? And what we're going to do is we're going to walk folks through what this means in terms of, as Joe Madison puts it, we're going to put it where the goats sit so people can understand. Because if you understand the history of our movement, how the King and others with our breadbasket, what they did was they first of all were engaged in enlightenment. That is, educate people first about the issues before they went out to big demands of companies and then these MOUs. The last piece, if you study Martin Depp's book, Operation Breadbasket, last piece was economic boycott. Too often, we are trying to put that on the front end, but they've actually gotten people up to speed to understand what this whole issue is on. And there's books that are sitting in front of me. I keep here my home studio. Again, that sort of keeps this thing front when we talk about money. The last book Dr. King wrote, Where Do We Go From Community to Where Do We Go From Here Community? He talks economics. His speech, 1968, Mason Temple. He talks about redistributing the pain. He talks about putting money in black. He talks about economic reciprocity. And too many of us have left that out of the equation. And so America, I believe, has no problem with us talking about mass incarceration, talking about criminal justice reform. But what did Coretta Scott King say? They killed my Martin and started talking about the money. And that's been, I believe, a big mistake where we have not had a laser-like focus on the money. So first up, I want to bring up someone who knows the book well. He is a fraternity brother of mine, of course, former mayor of New Orleans, president and CEO of the National Urban League. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring folks up, and I'm actually going. Pastor called me before, and I'm actually going to make some modifications because what I want to be able to do. I want to keep the conversation really moving, folks responding back and forth. So I'm going to bring Marc up to make some opening statements. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce all of our panelists. Everybody's going to have an opportunity to talk, but I want us to engage in a dialogue so we're feeding off each other. So we're teaching people about what we're talking about. So first up, National Urban League CEO Marc Morial.
Marc, go off of mute.
Okay. First of all, let me thank Roland for that introduction, and thank Roland for continuing to be a unapologetic voice for liberation, for equity, and justice. Let me also thank Reverend Dr. David Jefferson for his leadership in convening all of us today, but also his leadership and focus and fundamental understanding about why economic justice, economic empowerment, economic opportunity, economic inclusion must be at the center of our 21st century movement. And certainly Senator Ron Rice, Ryan Haygood, Jacob Walthour, all of these leaders for their work. Let me open by saying this. Throughout the Bible, Jesus makes references to the mustard seed. And there are various references to the mustard seed. And many of them characterize the mustard seed, as you know, is a very small seed that grows in the soil, and it produces a very large tree from a small seed. And Jesus makes references in many instances to the difference between a seed planted in soil that is fertile and irrigated and a seed that falls upon the rocks, falls where there is no soil, no irrigation. Our conversation today about Black economic empowerment is that we are a seed with tremendous energy and talent and potential. And we have to produce in this country a climate of soil and irrigation that can water and nurture our economic development seeds. And to me, this is so central to where we are. Now, the hard reality is that when it comes to economics in the 21st century, Black people are losing ground. We're losing ground when it comes to home ownership. On a national basis, our numbers have slipped 4, 5, 6, 7%. We don't know until we're out of the pandemic how much more severe that loss of equity in the homes that we own has slipped. We certainly are all aware that in today's environment, when it comes to African-American owned businesses, we've lost maybe 30 to 40% in this pandemic. And the original program, the Paycheck Protection Program, which was quote unquote designed to assist small businesses, did not assist sufficient numbers of Black small business owners in the first iterations. And now, with the Biden administration, there's effort to correct that outcome. So we have a work cut out for us, while at the same time, the number of Black people and Black families have amassed college degrees and postgraduate degrees and have had the opportunity to go where our forefathers and foremothers have not gone in the world of business and the world of politics, continues to be more than small, not large enough, but a significant asset in our community. I want to make this point because this is one of the most important points. The wealth gap that we see in America was created, nurtured, produced, and caused by public policy, by the government, by legislative decisions, by legal barriers that prevented us from getting educated, prevented us from having access to college, with the exception of historically Black colleges and universities, that due to redlining and official government policy prevented us from getting mortgages to buy homes, loans to build businesses, and the ability to sit in corporate boards historically. Now, certainly the reality of the last 40 years is the beginnings of change, with fierce headwinds being pushed against us. I want to talk for a minute because I think this is a setup. Where are the levers and where are the tools today? To a great extent, if you look at African-American businesses of size and scale in the United States today, by and large, they got their genesis in minority business set-aside programs championed first by African-American leaders. The late great Maynard Jackson among them, Coleman Young of Detroit, Marion Barry of Washington, my late father, Dutch Morial of New Orleans, to name a few, pioneered in creating set-asides, official government policies, which set aside contractual opportunities for Black-owned businesses. And therefore, many Black businesses of scale in investment banking, in engineering, and in construction got their start. These programs came under withering attack politically and legally, and their effectiveness, while so there, was curtailed by a Supreme Court decision back in the late 1980s. Also, federal government, through its 8A program and set-aside programs, created new opportunities, albeit not large enough, albeit not significant enough, for Black-owned businesses. Our lever is to demand that government policies, Pastor Jefferson, at the municipal, at the state, at the federal, at these outside agencies like port authorities and airport authorities and transit authorities, be held accountable to do business with African-American business owners where our political power gives us this leverage. And we need, as Roland used the term, enlightenment for a new generation of elected office holders who may not quite understand the power they have and the necessity and the important role that governments, which were once the barriers, need to be the avenues of opportunity. That's the fundamental logic here. You held back, you denied, you restricted, you gated off. Now it's time, if you will, to plant those mustard seeds in fertile, irrigated soil. Secondarily, the civil rights laws included a provision called Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which required those businesses that did business with the government to function in a non-discriminatory way. And there are, if you will, laws and policies and edicts that touch many of the largest businesses in America because they do business with the government in some way, shape, or form. Those policies have never been enforced. They've never been enforced to the fullest. So to a great extent, what we need is we have to build a strong, if you will, set of demands and determinations for those government agencies whose leaders are the product of our votes, the product of our support. And we have to have the conversation in a transparent way. In the state of New Jersey, the small business and minority business side initiatives ain't what they ought to be. Period. An exclamation point. A state like New Jersey that champions itself as a progressive state ought to have the best and the strongest in the country that produces the best results. And Reverend Jefferson and Senator Rice and all of us must raise that to new heights if we're going to deal with this economic justice, empowerment, and inclusion issue. And private businesses and supplier diversity. If you look at the Black Enterprise Top 100 list, what you're going to see is that most larger Black businesses today are B2B or B2G, meaning businesses that sell to business or businesses that sell to government. We have to grow that sector while at the same time creating a nurturing environment for those young people that want to be self-employed entrepreneurs, for the many women who are using their creativity and initiative to do this kind of work. We have to get serious about the economic agenda. And I think Roland made a great point. We can talk about criminal justice reform, and it is critical. We can talk about police and police community issues, and it is critical. Voting rights, it is critical. In my career, as I've walked into rooms at the Department of Treasury or at the Federal Reserve or at the Office of the Comptroller of Currency to carry this message, invariably, I've been the only person out of a few persons of color in the room. And I said to Senator Sherrod Brown that very thing recently. I said, in this administration, the Biden administration, I want to make sure that the Treasury Department and the Commerce Department and the Transportation Department that are key to business growth, economic development, infrastructure, have staffs that reflect this and policies that operationalize this. And the final thing I'll say is the very important role of faith-based organizations. Reverend David Jefferson knows this better than anyone. A piece of history. The late, great North Philadelphia preacher, Leon Sullivan, created not only Opportunities Industrialization Corporation, which was about skills, but he built Progress Plaza, which shopping center, shopping mall in North Philadelphia, way back in the 1970s by leveraging his power and the power of his congregation. I did similar things when I served as mayor to empower churches to be a role in economic development, whether it was housing or retail development. Now, this is not for every pastor to do, but we need to find those that have the wherewithal and the interest and the knowledge and help them do that. We've got to use every asset, our political power, our power as consumers, our power through our faith-based organizations and civil rights organizations to do this work. So I am just honored to be here today, be a part of this conversation, be a part of the discussion. And I thank Reverend Jefferson for his great leadership. Roland, always your voice, and everyone on the panel. And I look forward to continuing discussion.
Marc Morial, appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Introduce Ryan Haygood, National Civil Rights Lawyer, is also President and CEO of the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, leading a majority women of color team of racial justice advocates whose cutting edge work in grassroots organizing, research, writing, and policy played a critical role in impacting the lives of people of color in New Jersey. We also have Senator Ron Rice, who of course spoke on criminal justice, healthcare, affordable housing, and tenant rights and rights to education in the New Jersey legislature. So we have Senator Rice, we have Ryan Haygood, and we have Marc Morial. Pastor David Jefferson. And let me say this right now. I'm one to quickly point out there will be on this panel next time we have a conversation. So just want to go and make that real clear. This is not a black male only conversation. And so so all the folks who are watching certainly apologize. We do not have sisters on this panel. I want to bring right here Ryan, because I want to jump right to it. Well, Marc also laid out there, and Marc is still on our panel as well, so just want everybody to know. And so the whole point here is I want the conversation to include everybody, and so we don't need sprinkler head where I'm going to go directly to each person every single time. But Ryan, I am going to start with you. I think we got to make it clear to folks where, in terms of where the tranches are. So, for instance, there are 2.6 million prior to COVID. 2.6 million black-owned businesses in America. 2.5 million have one employee. Okay, so of all the black businesses in America, only 100,000 have more than one employee. Those black-owned businesses doing average revenue of $54,000. Now, when we had 1.9 million black-owned businesses, they were doing average revenue of $110,000. So, round that means is that we added 700,000 new black-owned businesses. This is prior to COVID, and the annual revenue was cut in half. And so, we need to understand numbers. We also need to understand, Ryan, that the greatest collection of black wealth in America resides in the hands of public employees. That is, those pension funds. We have to understand that what drives Wall Street, Ryan? Pension funds. The investments. What drives venture capital? Private equity? Pension funds. So the question then goes, people are getting rich off of the dollars of public workers, and a significant number of them are African American. I want to start there in New Jersey. Give us an indication of the dollars. What are we talking about and how much we're not getting when it comes to pension funds, when it comes to state contracts, when it comes to taxpayer dollars that black people are paying into, but we're not getting back.
So great to be with you again, Roland. We shared the stage a few times in the middle of COVID, and thanks, Pastor, for your leadership here. Always great to be on with my dear friend Marc Morial. And that question you posed, Roland, is the precise question for this moment. I'm so glad that Jacob's on the line, who has a lot of experience in that direction. I want to say, I responded to that question, Roland. I love how you opened this conversation referring to one of my favorite books, which I have right here, Dr. King's last book.
Same here.
Right. Where do we go from here, Chaos or Community? A book, Roland, that you note was written more than 50 years ago. And it's worth noting that one of his last trips was to New Jersey. You know, he came to New Jersey 8 days before he went to Memphis, where he was assassinated. He made several stops. He came here to Newark, where I live, where Pastor Jefferson's church is. And he came here, Roland, to your earlier point, to build support for the Poor People's Campaign. And as Marc was speaking, particularly around the need to build stronger policies, I was struck by the fact that more than 50 years after Dr. King came to Newark, New Jersey, and then went to Memphis 8 days later and was assassinated there, 50 years after he came to Newark to build support for the Poor People's Campaign, the individual net wealth of black people in this state is $179. 179 United States dollars. That's less than the cost of a laptop or a computer that we've all used to access this conversation today. And I lift it up because this is, to Marc's earlier point, New Jersey is one of the wealthiest states in the country, second only to Maryland. It's in New Jersey that the median net wealth for white families is $352,000, highest net wealth of any family in the country. But by stark and really staggering, shameful contrast, for black people in this state, the median net wealth for our families is $6,100. The individual net wealth for black families, for black adults in New Jersey, is $179, less than $200. All these years after Dr. King came to talk about building support for a Poor People's Campaign. And I lift that up because this is a state, to Marc's third point about power, where black folks have considerable power in the political process. We're one of the most reliable voting groups. This is true also nationally. We show out in numbers, meaningful numbers every year to vote for candidates in the last gubernatorial election, I'll close here, Mark, Black voters, of the Black voters who voted, 94% of them voted for our now governor, Governor Murphy. And Governor Murphy, as is true of every elected official at the state level, is running for re-election this year. So the racial wealth gap that we talk about, the numbers I lift up here are by design. And so the question for us is then, how do we design a system that finally connects Black people to the wealth, to the prosperity of this state? How do we design those policies? And how do we hold elected officials accountable? We've got one of the best in the country on the phone, Senator Rice, who's done a lot of work with us, so many others, to build those systems. But that work really has to be undertaken more intensely, more purposefully, and more assuredly if we're going to close the racial wealth gap by building a system of policies.
Senator Rice, I always talk about you got to follow the money. You go to Washington, D.C., you have the White House. There's only one federal agency that shares along with the White House, the Department of Treasury. Power, money. Money, power. Any conversation in America, you have to follow the money. And what I think, Senator Rice, what we have to do is we have to actually walk our people through and show this is what is already being spent. So in New Jersey, just like Georgia, Texas, all 50 states plus the federal government, you've got money being spent in housing, health and human services, your Commerce Department. It's being spent in every agency in New Jersey. And our mentality has to be, Black folks in New Jersey have to be asking, what are we getting out of each one? How many contracts? How many dollars being spent? Who are they going to? If you're the state, are you investing where are you placing your money? Is your money going into mainstream banks? Or are you also placing your money in Black banks? And then the question should be, if you're placing your money in mainstream banks, are you creating a system where they're providing access to capital, lines of credit to Black businesses that are getting state contracts? And so, we can talk about this thing, Senator, in very esoteric terms, but we got to be real clear to say, hey, folks, this is the current situation. We're getting 1%, 2%, 5%. We should be getting 10, 15, 20, 25%.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. And Roland, it's good to see you again. The last time I saw you was at NBCSL, but Gilda and everybody when you came to talk to us.
Indeed.
Let me also thank Reverend Jefferson and others for putting this together, and Mark, and those who are on here. Let me say real quickly, this conversation is not new to me.
Right.
It's a very frustrating one. Maybe about 10 years ago or so, or maybe earlier, the Honorable Reverend Jesse Jackson, we had this conversation in Newark when we called Cornell Brooks and others from NAACP, the now Lieutenant Governor, Speaker Oliver, and we talk about, as you said, follow the money. New Jersey, 13% of the population are Black folk, but yet we have a pension fund of $80 billion. And we don't have any say-so as to where the dollars are being invested. And so when you look at New Jersey, Jersey City is a good example. Money goes into the Gold Coast when we feel our 13% or something close to it should go into the infrastructure we already have, where we can live and we can put people to work, et cetera. Because we don't live in the Gold Coast, we can't afford it. But then you have governors coming along, like Governor McGreevey, who was a Democrat, and we get challenged by the GI Corporation, 4 white males, on affirmative action set aside for women and minorities. And rather than going to court, because I don't believe they had standing, even though I'm not a lawyer, I understand the law, they had standing, rather than going to court to fight back, what we in fact did was a consent decree that handicapped us, because it was mentioned by you earlier, set aside programs. We had set aside programs for women and minority businesses. The consent decree said we would no longer have set aside programs for women and minority businesses. We would have set aside for small businesses. And so every time you turn around, we have to do disparity study, which we're doing now. We did one before and it was clear that women and minorities were not really participating, discrimination all over the place. And then we rolled into John Croissant. And I always argue about the Wall Street piece. Why are we not getting some of the management and co-management work at the state? There's always the big ones, who are getting the dollars, et cetera. The underwriting stuff is the small piece. And going back when Cecil Banks, God bless his soul, years ago when I was arguing the case, I think it may have been Floyd administration, we were able to get one person to be a co-person, bond manager. and they kept denying people. But this particular person at that time was one of 2 Black people who owned a seat on the stock exchange. And I told the governor, you can't deny him. You find all kinds of excuses, but you can't deny this one. That was the last I know of that we had a co-manager or manager of our bonds, et cetera. That's $80 billion we invest pension funds alone. We haven't even really talked, as someone said, about the authorities and the universities, et cetera, with dollars. And then we come along to where we are today. It's been too much rhetoric. Every governor I've worked with, those I've supported, even those I didn't support that I fought, the rhetoric about women and minorities set aside, women and minority participation have been just that. So now what we are doing is the Legislative Black Caucus has, during the Curzon administration, kind of put some pieces in place that was dismantled by the Christie administration. But today we have a chief diversity officer, Hester Agagosi, who's very good at what she does. She's not being given the support I believe that she should be given. We're going to keep fighting for that. And she should be the right hand of the government on everyday activities with the other diversity officers in the various places. The EDA said they're going to now start a program to try to figure out how to do a set aside for women and minorities, which will probably get challenged, who have the ability to be investment and brokerage firms. But the state don't even keep a record of who firms are and how many firms we're using, if any. Now, I know there's no record because, number one, we're not using too much of anybody, et cetera. The one thing I think needs to happen, and I appreciate being here, because when I hear Morial speak, Mark, and I hear you speak, Roland, and I hear others that's going to be speaking, there's a couple of things. The Black Caucus recognized that we get rhetoric regardless of what we do, and we fight back. So what we did was we organized what we call our civil rights leaders. And we meet every Tuesday now. And that's the Institute for Social Justice, the state conference of NAACP. It's the New Jersey Black Issues Convention, the Association of Black Women Lawyers, the Garden State Bar Association, which is Black lawyers. It's the Salvation and Justice Organization. It's a clergy group. It's the New Jersey Fair Housing Center. It's the African American Chamber of Commerce. It's the New Jersey Medical Association of Black Doctors. Even in COVID, we're not participating. The Urban League of Essex County, et cetera. We did that so we can have conversation. What we also did was organize what we call the New Jersey Black Elected Official Policy Alliance. And that was under the leadership of Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman when she was here, myself and others, because we recognize that we need to have a list, and the state doesn't have a list, by the way, of who the Black elected officials are throughout the state, from school board to Congress. And so we had to get on the phones, work with Institute of Social Justice and put this list together, over 431 Black elected officials. Then we called a few meetings to have conversations. It became clear to me and to others that Black elected officials are stuck in some of the white communities by themselves, but everybody's pushing for economic justice and more minority and women participation. And so what we need is the Morials, and someone mentioned that Roland Martin is going to expose this stuff. We need the exposure. And I think we need people to come and talk to our Black elected officials in the collective more than once and energize and motivate them because they're ready. We've been pushing back as the 20 Black elected officials in the legislature, but we don't control all the leadership, et cetera. And finally, what I want to say, so we can get into more conversation, is the fact that we have, Ryan, the Institute for Social Justice. When you say social justice to people, they're thinking more along the sociological types of things that impact our community. We need an Institute for Economic Justice that does same kinds of things that Ryan does with the social justice, expose folk. Or we need the Institute for Social Justice, if their board members would allow them to become the Institute for Social and Economic Justice, where they can get really deep into the economics of it. Because we are fighting for the resources in terms of what we need to address criminal justice and environmental reforms and things like that. But we're not fighting from an organization perspective for the economic justice. How do we get small businesses participate and to get the contracts and things in that magnitude? So I want to end on that because I could talk about this forever because I'm frustrated. Oftentimes I feel like the Lone Ranger here in New Jersey, And every governor we have had has given us rhetoric and moved pieces along to act like they are doing something, but the end results remain the same.
Certainly appreciate that, Senator Rice. I'm going to go to Jacob Walthour in a second, but Jacob, just hold right there. Jacob is co-founder, CEO of Blueprint Capital Partners. So hold on one second. Mark, to the point he just made there, again, I'm talking about, for me, it has to be very specific information. So I'll give an example. 2018, NNPA got with Councilman Eleanor Holmes Norton. Study was done on how much was the government spending on advertising. 5-year period, $5 billion spent. Black media got 51 million out of 5 billion. So essentially, a bill was being spent every year. Black media was only getting 10 million. Having that information now allows for us to be able to target folks to say, hey, what the hell is going on? How are we getting 1%? In the overall advertising industry, 150 billion being spent every single year. It's about 1% that black media is getting. Now we start talking about defense contracts. Now we start talking about same thing. Who controls the spending when it comes to the census contracts? Right now, billions are being spent when it comes to COVID-19. How much is going to black organizations? How much is going to black media entities? How much is going to black businesses when it comes to that? And so, from a New Jersey standpoint, we've already heard from the senator, $80 billion pension fund. The questions, Mark, should be, first, how much of the $80 billion are black folks managing? 2, of the white firms you hired, do they have black partners, black executives? Are they using black lawyers? Are they using black bond companies? I think part of the issue here is, Mark, we're not approaching this from what I call a 360-degree view. We're some folks are just satisfied if they have one black person who's a managing partner. No, it has to be black folks and black firms can be managing those dollars, just like we could be getting other contracts. We've got to have the very specific numbers. So when we ask for it, we say, here your number, where your black numbers, this is how much we want. Mark, you're on mute.
I'm happy to take that.
Jacob, hold on one second.
Yeah,
Mark, I need your response, and then I'm coming back to Jacob.
I'm gonna tell you 3 things. Ron Rice, thank you for your the explanation and for the advocacy. I'll just tell you, when I took over as mayor of New Orleans in 1995, I took the position, I will not sign any bond documents. I will not approve any bond transaction unless there was meaningful participation by black investment bankers. Number 2, I will not sign any bond documents. I will not approve any transaction unless there was meaningful participation by black bond lawyers. Period. Exclamation point. I had the power to do it. Number 2, at the National Urban League today, we have an endowment. It's a modest size endowment. 60% of all the asset managers are asset managers of color. It's about 40% African American. We did that, and let me tell you what I found, because we did an RFP process, that the returns of many of the black firms were better than the returns on many of the brand firms. Now, let me drill right quick. Sounds to me that this consent decree that Governor McGreevey signed is an obstacle to enacting a policy, which is the state of New Jersey needs a policy, whether by statute or whether by gubernatorial executive order, to mandate, set targets, set very specific goals for African American, people of color, minority business, if you will, spending, and most specifically with respect to this pension fund. And I'm gonna pledge my commitment. I know the policy side of this, right? I participated because I served in the state legislature, I served as mayor of the city, and moved the dial on this because I said, without participation, I sign nothing. I do nothing, right? Everybody said, okay. I said, okay, we got a good understanding. And then there was participation throughout the years that I served, whether it was our airport, whether it was our transit authority, whether it was the city or any of its related agencies. So I think here, the enlightenment about the fact that the numbers are paltry, but number 2, the enlightenment about what is the policy obstacle? And this calls for a direct conversation that I'm willing to participate in, Pastor Jefferson, Senator Rice, with Governor Murphy. Because one thing on these issues, Roland, I've been on the other side. I'm not bullshit.
Right.
You know, when they give you all these stories, like, look, I've dealt with investment banks, and I have participated in helping Black investment bankers get business with Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Black banks, and the like, right? And so there's got to be a will from the top at the chief executive officer to make this happen. And if this consent decree is a problem, then there needs to be a modification of it or a compelling case made to fundamentally get rid of it.
The thing here, Jacob, and why I this is important is because what we're talking about here cuts across all aspects of local, of city, school board, county, state, and federal government. Mm-hmm. And the reason this is, well, I'll keep talking about Black economic social justice, where's our money, is because we're taxpayers. So this is not, oh, y'all asking for a handout. No, what we're asking for is money that we are already putting in and should be coming back to our community. Specifically on from the pension standpoint. And again, I'm going to cover multiple things here, but specifically on the pension piece. Senator Rice has already said it's $80 billion. You and your firm have filed a lawsuit against the state of New Jersey. For the purpose of people who don't know anything about that, who don't know anything about how this works, what is the basis of that lawsuit? And right now, of the $80 billion, how much is being managed by Black firms?
Sure. So Roland Martin, I have spent 30 years on Wall Street. And during my time on Wall Street, I have seen my fair share of discrimination, and I have been the victim of my fair share of discrimination. But none of that discrimination compares to what I experienced in the state of New Jersey over the course of the last 5 years. My firm and the people who work for the firm were treated with such disdain and such disrespect that I literally would go home at night and cry publicly. And in 2020, after the death of George Floyd, and after watching my teenage kids and my 20-year-old kids take to the streets, pushing for change, I said to myself, how can I honestly sit back and watch this to continue to occur? The consequences are too meaningful. There is $80 billion in this pension fund. And by my estimate, less than 5% of that pension fund is managed by people who look like me and you. I'll take it a step further. Governor.
No, hold on. Wait. Oh, you said 5% of the $80 billion is being managed by Black folks.
Exactly.
Okay, hold up. So I don't like using percentages. So for the people who are watching, out of the $80 billion, $4 billion managed by Black people out of $80 billion.
Correct.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. What's the percentage of Black public workers in New Jersey?
So I only know from my church. And we actually did a survey in my church, which is a Black church. And we wanted to know what percentage of this congregation, it is one of the largest congregations in New Jersey, has about 7,000 members, were participants in the pension plan. 60% of the people raised their hand and said, I contribute money to that pension fund.
Okay, hold on. Hold that. Again, trust me, I'm doing this for a reason. Senator Rice, do you have the actual numbers of the New Jersey pension fund? How many of the state folks in the pension fund are Black?
No, I don't think it's a valid question. I need to get the answer, because what I do know is that when you look at the labor unions, the service workers, the majority of, I can't say the majority, a substantial number of them just in the service side are Black folks, low income people.
Right.
PWA asked me, etc. So I need to get that. I think that's a good, valid question, and we never asked it.
So Jacob, here's why I'm walking through that, because what I'm trying to show for the people, so we have a pathway, and this is some stuff Mark knows, because this is how when you sort of walk these folks down. $80 billion pension fund. Let's just say 30%. Let's just say 30 for the purpose of the conversation. 30% of the state's public workers are African American. That means that, let's just take, so if 30% of the public workers are African American, and we're managing 5%, which is $4 billion, essentially, these firms are managing the money of Black people, and Black people are not participating.
Not only
Go ahead.
the money of Black people,
That's
and
the
Black
point.
people are not participating, they're not hiring Black people to be involved in the management of the money.
When you say
Nor
they,
is
when you
the
say
state
they,
holding
when you
them
say the
accountable.
state, when you say they're not hiring Black people, are we speaking of the firms the state hires, or the state itself?
Let's take BlackRock.
Go ahead.
BlackRock is one of the defendants in the lawsuit that Blueprint has filed against the state of New Jersey. BlackRock has openly admitted, after hearing from us that we're going to sue them, that they have done a woeful job in hiring African Americans, and have committed over the next 3 years that at least 15% of their hires will be African American. Meanwhile, the company has been sued by an African American female who alleges that she was treated horribly, and when she spoke up about it, they pushed her out of the organization. A letter just came out last week from 2 other African Americans directly to the CEO of BlackRock, Mr. Larry Fink, indicating to him that the conditions of working inside of BlackRock are horrible for Black folks. Meanwhile, the federal court revealed last week that they're going to let a lawsuit continue where the actual employees of BlackRock are suing the firm, alleging that in their pension system, the 401k, BlackRock is actually taking economic advantage of its own employees. And to add insult to injury, 24 large pension funds, not the state of New Jersey, but the state of California, the state of Illinois, the state of New Mexico, have written an open letter to BlackRock saying, we have concerns about your reputation. But most of all, we have concerns because you financially supported 147 Republicans that voted against certifying President Biden's election. So let's just call a spade a spade. This is a Wall Street firm that has issues from multiple perspectives. Yet they're the largest asset manager that the state of New Jersey employs. And the fact that a Democratic governor doesn't have an issue with an organization that supported 147 Republicans that wanted to overturn the Biden election is deeply troubling. And we have to ask ourselves, to what extent is he really on the job? Like, I think we really know at the end of the day how he got the job. Governor Murphy did not grow up in Democratic politics. Governor Murphy had a lot of money, and he was able to position himself for the Democratic nomination. In fact, a lot of his ideals are not even aligned with the Democrats. Let's take his campaign, for example. Female campaign consultants called it a toxic environment, misogynistic. And when one young lady alleged that she was raped by a senior official on the campaign, that senior official was hired into a senior level job in the Murphy administration. Let's move forward to the Edna Mahan prison, the only female prison in the state of New Jersey. Almost 30 employees have been suspended because of serial rape and sexual abuse at Edna Mahan. Women were forced to have sex in order to get access to toilet paper. That's tragic, Roland.
let me.
The governor's response has been, well, that happened under the previous administration. That didn't happen under the previous administration. That happened in 2018 and 2019, and the U.S. Attorney's Office called it New Jersey's biggest open secret. And he hasn't fired anyone. He hasn't suspended anyone.
So let me walk folks through. I need again, for everybody who's watching and listening, when we talk about how do we then begin to make the changes, you got to sort of create the flow. And that is where are these 4 or 5 largest deposits of money? And so we already talked about pension funds. Then I should be identifying what are the other areas. And then out of that, okay, who's getting what? Who are the firms? Because Pastor, there are 2 things that we have to be doing. I think one, we have the most important thing is demanding that black companies be participants in these major dollars. But the second piece is holding these white companies to a racial equity standard. See, so to me, it's not one or the other. It's actually both. But our priority, Pastor, first is to ensure that we're getting equitable share of dollars to black-owned companies, not black-front companies. That is the focus, and we have to get our folks laser focused on this is how much is being spent, this is how much we're getting, this is how much we should be getting.
But we also have to get our people focused on the leadership.
No. I understand, but I can't.
The leadership that controls where the dollars are going.
Right, but I can't. But I can't get our folks focused on the leadership till I get them to understand what's at stake, and then we go in and what's the ask. Part of the problem with these issues in the past is that we make demands that are not specific. I'm talking about, Pastor, I want specific demands. I want to be able to walk in, and that's what I mean here. Pastor Jefferson, step in again. How are you walking your parishioners through the specific information so we are clear on what the ask is?
Well, let me say, first of all, Roland, I believe that at the end of the day, and Jake alluded to this, we have 60% of our folks that are absolutely engaged, putting money into the pension fund, and they need to know how much money that represents that is a part of that pension fund. That's number one. Here's the second thing that we've done. What we basically said to people is this, that if you have Wall Street folks that are getting that huge percent of money, it goes to white developers who then come in and put things up in your community that we cannot afford. We have to connect the dots so that Aunt Sally knows the reason you can't afford that is because somebody is using your pension money. Somebody is using your pension money to gentrify your community and put things up you can't afford. Now, we can talk all day about the fact that they're putting up stuff, but if Aunt Sally can't connect pension funds to things going up into the community that she's not controlling, because we don't have any African Americans that are part of the investment board, we don't have African Americans in BlackRock, we don't have African Americans that are managing that money, then Aunt Sally would never understand how she's being ripped off. And I absolutely do think that pastors got to play a major role. Let me just say this, and this is not a plug for pastors, it's a plug for the Black church. Martin Luther King was a Black Baptist preacher. Leon Sullivan was a Black Baptist preacher. Adam Clayton Powell was a Black Baptist preacher. Benjamin Hooks was a Black Baptist preacher. Economic justice has always been a major part of the platform of the Black Baptist Church. And we have to educate those people over our pulpit, because we cannot afford to give Democrats a waiver and say, just because you're a Democrat, we're not going to hold you accountable for our money. We have to indeed engage in that. And I think this conversation right here has to move us to the next step. And I'll just say this, Roland, what we're bringing out right here now will be a set of facts that I will share with ministers, because we're going to beat this drum until people know the facts, get the data, and I couldn't agree with you more. We got to build it from the bottom up. You can't put a house up and don't have a foundation.
Right.
And
Ryan,
so that to me.
So Pastor, if I can right quickly.
Yeah, Senator, go ahead.
Yeah, what the two of you are saying, I see a couple of things. Number one, the Legislative Black Caucus has been asking a lot of questions. And we've been asking some right questions, but not enough right questions. The questions that was raised by Roland Martin, we need to have those questions that we can raise them to, not only verbally, but in writing to everybody that can respond to them. And we get nothing back, then we can take an active role. I think also we need to make sure that the faith-based leaders that we've organized statewide and the Black elected officials statewide should know everything we are doing in this conversation and make them a integral part of it in terms of education, etc. Because what I see is a movement that may have to take place to expose this, but we're going to need not only the leadership of New Jersey, because we're looked at like any other politician in many cases, and sometimes it's more racial divided. We're going to need the Roland Martins and the Marc Morials and others to come together collectively. I think that there's a process that needs to be put in place, and I think chronologically we should be working collectively to do some things that makes good sense for the exposure, including the conversation with the governor with the right questions.
See, Ryan, Pastor, go ahead. Pastor, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I gotta speak to this. I gotta speak to this. The people who go to the polls to put Phil Murphy in office and the other folks come to our churches. We are the ones that have the people. The senator is absolutely right. And I want to be clear. I have assembled this group here today in order to ensure that we are working together to lead the path, to get the facts, to expose what this governor is doing, what his administration is doing. And if we therefore really work this together and have the synergy and produce the facts, we'll get there. 3 things we have engaged upon, and I want to be clear. And Dr. King laid it out. The first one, we're agitating. The second one, we have absolutely gotten a commitment that we're going to have legislation. And that's what Mark talked about a few minutes ago. We have to have legislation. And third, we're going to litigate. We're building this foundation with facts. Senator Rice is right, but I want to be clear. We have to give the people a voice. These people are not aware of the facts, the data, the information that exists. And because of that, we have not kind of brought this thing together. And so this is the second town hall. I've committed to the public that we're going to have 4. We're going to have another one that's going to be centered around Patterson. We're going to have another one that's going to be centered around Atlantic City, Trenton, and Camden. So at the end of the day, I really do believe this is a great, great point for us to make here.
Ryan, Ryan, the thing that I'm sort of this thing I'm sort of building, and Mark, I'm going to go to you next as well. That I'm sort of trying to construct here is the average person out there is not knee deep in politics. They're not knee deep in the numbers, and what they want to know is, okay, how much is there we not getting? Then what's the plan to get it? The work of the Black Caucus that people don't quite understand is that the Black Caucus can hold hearings. The Black Caucus can bring folks in to force them to testify under oath. So what you do is you have to have an inside-outside game. You got the Black Caucus that's fighting there on the inside. You've got Jacob, who has filed a lawsuit where they have lawyers and they're going through discovery. But you got to have the external pressure that is being applied of people going to the state capitol, of people demanding questions at legislative town halls, of people tweeting the governor, calling the offices, asking very basic questions, and that is, what is the slice of the economic pie that black businesses are getting? Because what people have to understand, black businesses largely hire black people. If you're able to grow the capacity of black businesses, then you're able to hire more black people. If we're saying there's a problem with having black people who are on Wall Street, well, if Jacob's firm goes from managing, I'm just throwing numbers out, 5 billion to 70 billion, he now can hire folks who are not going to be working in a company and going on Wall Street. Then if I, with a black media company, if I can go from 12 employees to 50 employees, I can now cover more news and now be able to cover our community. So the point everybody needs to understand who's watching, this fight builds the black community 360 degrees holistically, because we're talking about building capacity, not just building wealth for one person.
Yeah. So Roland, I've loved every aspect of this conversation. I particularly love that your frame of it has been from an asset perspective. So very often we talk about racial justice, social justice, economic justice. We hear, well, there's not enough money to support the thing you want, right? We hear that often, and I love that this conversation is actually, we're talking about what is our money, and how do we get access to our money, and how do we get access to managing what is our money. And that is a conversation from, I think, a position of power. You know, one of the things about New Jersey that people often sleep on is that New Jersey is overwhelmingly Democratic.
Right.
It's controlled by both houses of the legislature are overwhelmingly Democratic. The governor's Democratic, right? So there is not a Republican to blame for the challenges that we now face. Certainly they were inherited by this administration, but if we want to face them and overcome them, we only need the will to do it. And I think a lot about, Public Enemy many years ago talked about how neither party is ours as black people, not the jackass or the elephant. And whoever's in office, right, it's on us to hold them accountable. So this brings to focus your point, Roland, about power and how we derive power through democracy, and how this, for us in New Jersey, it's a precious year because every seat is up in the Assembly and the Senate, 120 seats, and the governor is running for re-election. And we mentioned earlier that the governor won his election the first time he ran because he got 94% of the black vote. He only got 47% of the white votes. The reality is, without that incredibly robust, near unanimous support from black voters, there's a good chance he wouldn't be the governor today. So the question for everyone watching us is, so when your elected officials come to you, and they will, particularly our faith leaders, are going to make that move, right? They're going to come to the black churches now virtually. They'll say some words, offer some promises. I think before we hear the promises, to Roland's point, we have to proceed with a list of demands around an economic justice strategy and hold them accountable. We're not going to vote for you if we can't get from you real promises.
Right.
What we need to see happen.
I'm going to go to Mark and Jacob. Mark, what I'm talking about here, and what Ryan just said, first of all, that is awesome to know. Since every person is going to be up for re-election, Maynard Jackson had this idea, and Randall Robinson talked about it, where he said we could put our black agenda on a card that can be handed out to every person. They can whip it out and ask any elected official, you support this, this, this. What we're talking about, Mark, I really think the path forward is for this coalition to establish that this is the specific black economic social justice agenda, to ask every elected official to say, will you commit to this, not after you get reelected, but you're in office right now, and then measure what they say, because this is the other benefit, Mark. If you increase the capacity of black businesses who are hiring black people, now we have greater dollars to fund the Urban League and fund the NAACP and fund HBCUs and fund our organizations. And so part of the reason Black America is sort of at a standstill is because we are relying on corporate America to fund our institutions, because we're not individually making the dollars. That's also the value in this battle. Imagine if all of a sudden, a year from now, we come back and say, black folks in New Jersey were getting $10 billion of economic development, and because of this battle, we double that or quadruple that. That is real economic change for black communities.
What I will say, Roland, is that our
Hold on. That was hold on.
I think, Roland, you've done a great job guiding and focusing.
Jacob, hold tight 1 second. Mark was on mute. Mark, then come to Jacob. Mark, go ahead.
Okay. Focusing our discussion into something that I think is meaningful and workable. So I want to try, because this is a town hall meeting, it's a working session, to maybe put forth something. And I'll just give you an example. When I ran for office the first time, I met with this group of, I'll call it business leaders, who called me in, and they went through a questionnaire of approximately 15 questions. At the conclusion of the meeting, they said, okay, we're prepared to support you. We need you to sign right here on this dotted line, because we've recorded your answers. And we want you to sign on the dotted line. And if you sign and say, these are the things you've agreed to, we will support you both politically and financially. What we need is a Black economic justice agenda, very specific and very precise, that becomes a precondition to political support for anyone running for the legislature statewide office, including the governor in New Jersey. And I think that that can easily be pulled together from the elements, I think, between Ryan, Senator Rice, Reverend Jefferson, Jacob, all of us, including many others. We can pull something like this together, which serves as a plank. We could fit on a card, and it is something we're going to tell our voters that this is what we want in terms of a public commitment. Not talking about backroom deals. Not talking about behind the scenes. I'm not talking about handshakes. I'm talking about not help this dude or help that dude. I'm talking about a broad commitment to public policy changes that are going to drive economic justice. And I think, Roland, it formulates what you have suggested here. I think, Reverend Jefferson, what your energy has been all about. And I think, Ryan, you and your team as great experts on law and policy, and Senator Rice, your intimate knowledge of the workings of the inside of the government and the legislature. We can do this, and we have to be very public and open about it. And the idea is to get as many leaders to say, this is our united precondition. Sign here to operationalize these things, and we will support you for re-election. The challenge is you gotta have the gumption, you gotta have the courage to even challenge your friends,
right?
Your political allies, your political friends. You've got to do it notwithstanding party identification and label. And it's very simple. Right. These guys put this thing in front of me. I was 31 years old, and I literally almost hyperventilated that they wanted me to sign my name on something. I said, look, I need 24 hours to go look at this a little bit more closely to make sure what I said is what I said, and what I said is what you wrote. But the bottom line is they strategically were leveraging people to support their agenda. And they were engaging in sophisticated politics. They said, okay, you sign, we support, we're just we like most of what you said. Some things we don't agree with, but overall, we like you. So I think we have to engage in a new way of engaging with people. I think now is the time. I don't think you can wait. I don't think you can tarry. I think we have to do it. And I think it is very easy to operationalize what this agenda might be, and it can cover a range of economic justice and economic empowerment issues. So that's my thought process based on this conversation, which has been very good. How do we take this conversation and turn it into, Roland, an action step? And then we can have a rally. We can announce this at a rally or at an event, and we can send a very strong message to everyone running. We need as many members of the Legislative Black Caucus to sign on, as many pastors, community groups, leaders, and others to sign on and say, this is our precondition for support. You got to sign on to this agenda. It's going to be very, very public. And if you lie to us, You lying to us in writing. You put your name on it. Now, see, we're not talking about a backroom deal.
Right,
Between politicians. We're talking about public engagement and a public agenda.
See, Jacob, this is the reason why this is all critically important. It's because this is no different what Grover Norquist did. They had Republicans sign pledges not to raise taxes. If you wanted their endorsement, you had to do it. And so the battle that you're engaged in, I mean, you're on that inside, you're engaged in this fight, your legal fight, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in a legal fight. Really what you need is that external force of the community standing with you, supporting you, but also not just benefiting you. What Martin has laid out, what we've been talking about, what Senator Rice has been talking about, what Ryan's talking about, Pat's talking about, actually helps all black businesses, present or future, because we're establishing a template to saying this is how we truly get our fair share. You want our votes? Show us the money. Jacob, go ahead.
You know, Roland, that to bring about change, sometimes you got to be the one that steps out there first. And I don't want you to think that we did not circle all the wagons and look for other people to support what we thought was an out economic justice.
Of course.
In fact, Senator Wright stepped up first, and he wrote a scathing letter to the governor and said, what you have done to Blueprint is nothing short of an economic lynching. Now, we would have thought that Senator Rice, chair of the black legislators of New Jersey, would have such an effect that other people would come on board and help support our initiative in terms of getting the governor's mind right around the pension fund. It didn't work that way. And the reason why it didn't work that way was something we just talked about a few minutes ago. There is a fundamental hypocrisy sometimes in our own party. And I'm a loyal Democrat, and I make no bones about that. I'm a loyal Democrat. I typically vote Democrat. I contribute Democrat and will continue to support Democrat. But I also have to be honest that we need to make our party a better party, and we need to call out people who are not living up to the fundamentals of the party. Otherwise, over time, the fabric of the party starts to fray and it weakens. In the last election, the presidential election, exit polls showed that 18% of black men voted for Donald Trump, and 8% of black women voted for Donald Trump. One vote by a black man and one vote by a black woman was too much, but I think that sends a message that we have to be prepared to analyze and ask ourselves some fundamental questions. There has been historically an abusive relationship between the Democratic Party and black folks. And we need to get to a point where the promises that are made are the promises that are delivered. And if we need to follow Marc's plan for getting it on writing publicly, then we need to follow that plan for getting it on paper publicly.
Well, see, here's the Senator Rice. I think part of the issue here is we've been actually making a limited ask. I think part of the issue here is that, again, I have spoken all across this country. I've spoken to Black Chambers of Commerce, HBCUs, Black community groups. I've done more Freedom Fund dinners. I've done more National Urban League dinners. And I'm going to tell you straight up, money is not the top 3 issues that ever come up. And what I keep arguing is you got to make money number one, because every other issue is tied to money.
But in New Jersey, it's the issue that the Black Caucus do make number one. Unfortunately, it falls on deaf ears. And then the weakness come, unlike Southern politics. I'm from the South. The things that you hear members of NBCSL doing and how they stay bonded to these kinds of things get a little weak here. not so much an articulation of the problems and the ask fors, but the politics of it at that level. And so that's why it becomes important for us to do, as Mark said, lay something out as a plan, but then we have to educate those who want to participate and don't know how to participate. And that's the 400 plus Black elected officials from school board to Congress. The school board have monies also that they invest over there, and they have job opportunities. And that's where we need the support, meaning the Black Caucus, the members who are fighting these battles. And that's why I say that if there was an announcement that we're going to do certain kinds of things that's talked about here, and there's an announcement that we have an Institute for Economic Justice and a purpose behind it, I think that's going to shake up a lot of folk. It'll bring our people together, because oftentimes they feel that we are no different than the white folk, that we fight, but we don't fight hard enough. You are right. We ask questions, and sometimes we're not asking all the right questions for whatever reason that is.
Roland,
Roland,
I'm gonna go Ryan, then Pastor. I'm gonna go Ryan, then Pastor. Ryan, go.
I wanted to underscore your point, Roland, because I think it beautifully articulates that when we rely on promises from elected officials or hopeful candidates, they give us what they're willing to give, that which is convenient for them. But I think the power move is when we actually make demands on them based on what we need, and then they respond to those. And so I just want to lift up that I think we're in that space right here in New Jersey to do what we talked about on the phone, to make those very specific demands of candidates as they're most attentive in this year, and then to withhold support from folks who can't deliver on what we are demanding.
Pastor.
Yeah, let me just say that I want to acknowledge that part of what we're doing right now is not only to shift the paradigm, stand on the shoulder, but give new birth to an approach like Mark laid out. The reason I wanted to assemble this group is because the senator made a point that we have not made the progress that we needed to make. Listen, we're going to have the governor and other people trying to get into our churches, which they have done for years, and we have given them a platform for which they can get people out to vote. And we have not demanded nothing in exchange for that. Let's call that today and say that will stop. And we're not going to allow that to happen anymore, because we know where they go. And so if nothing else, Roland, the framework you have provided, the facts that are coming forth, what Mark has stated, what Ryan has stated, and what the senator has stated, and Jacob, it gives us now part of a strategy that says that if we work it this way, hold people accountable, we can get there. And I would say that while this is a part of it, we're going to have another one, and we're going to have another one, because here's what we do. We are an episodic people. We will hit something, go on to the next thing, and leave it alone and expect results. We have been pushing, I've been pushing from my pulpit for years, that we got to give attention to economic justice. We got to follow the money. We got to look at this. When you look at what happened to George Floyd, and we all know that that was a major injustice, economic justice does not create the same kind of attention. But I do believe today is going to move this thing forward in a huge way. And I want to continue to work this and continue to kind of frame it so that we can get some action here.
So let me tie this up in a way that moves us forward. That was one of my favorite scenes. Comes from the movie Malcolm X, and there's a scene where Brother Johnson has been beaten by the cops, and Denzel, playing Malcolm X, says, "Call an ambulance." Ambulance comes to get Brother Johnson, takes him to the hospital. The white cop comes up to Malcolm X and says, "Okay, you came and got what you want, now break it up." Malcolm X says, "No, I'm not satisfied. I need folk to understand. I'm not satisfied. None of us are satisfied. We're not satisfied with Democrats. We're not satisfied with Republicans. We're not satisfied with the same thing they have been stating. This is the moment for us to use our leverage and our power to make demands. One, having the information to get it. And we think about the money. I think about what Denzel played when he played Frank Lucas, when he said, I'm going to get that money. There are pools of billions of dollars right now. Not I'm trying to convince somebody white for reparations. I'm talking about there are pools of billions of dollars in New Jersey, New York, and every state in the federal government where we're not getting our fair share, which means we have to apply the pressure. I need folk to understand. I own my show. We will be bringing the show to New Jersey. We will be bringing the cameras that we own to New Jersey. We will be questioned. I had Governor Phil Murphy on my show a couple of times. My booker was reaching out because he needs to come back on my show to discuss this very issue. Senator Rice, I need you to give me a list of the top 10 officials in New Jersey who need to be questioned on this very issue. The governor, Speaker of the House, head of the Senate, whatever that list is, we're going to call every single one of them to see if they're going to come on the show. Black media has always served a purpose of shining a light on these issues. Folk need to understand, I don't do entertainment and sports on the show. We do news, politics, issues. We're about trying to educate and empower our people. We're going to use the power of media to hit them, and they got to answer the question. And if they decline to come on the show, we're going to tell everybody they are refusing to come and talk about these issues. And don't be surprised if they hit the campaign trail and our cameras show up, because that's also what it means when you have black power and you actually own your stuff. You're not asking somebody else for permission. And so to everybody who's watching, look for this to come out. Look for the information. Look for the marching orders. If you're in New Jersey and you want to participate and help with this, Pastor, where should they go? Is there a phone number, or email, a website if people want to get involved in this effort?
So blueprintllc.com is the website. blueprintllc.com, and then send an email to information. And we will forward your information and keep you posted on progress.
Pastor?
They can also send it, if they don't get that, they can send it to mbcnewark.org. Go to the website. There'll be a section there where they can send that, and we would definitely hit them back. We want every avenue possible to hear from people. Roland, I repeat, if people are not doing something about this or saying something about this, they are implicit in the problem.
Ryan, your information, please.
Sure, so you.
I'm sorry, guys. It's hello at mbcnewarknj.org. Let me repeat, hello at mbcnewarknj.org. Thank you.
Got it. Ryan?
Roland.
Thanks again for a terrific program, Pastor, and thanks for leading us through it, Brother Martin. So our institute website address is www.njisj.org, which stands for the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice.
Mark, first of all, Mark, if people want to participate, there are people who are watching who live in other states who might be interested. How should they reach the Youth Urban League?
They should reach me at presidentoffice@nul.org. They can follow us on social media at Marc Morial or at Nat Urban League. Our website is www.nul.org. I would invite everyone's attention to the State of Black America report from 2020 and 2019 and 2018, and our State of Black America report coming forward this June, where we will address many of these issues we're discussing. So thank you, Pastor Jefferson, Roland, Senator Rice, Ryan, Jacob. This has been a powerful discussion, and Pastor Jefferson, thank you for bringing us together.
Senator Rice.
Can I
Well, hold on, Pastor, 1 second. You're going to close it out.
Sorry.
You're going to close it out.
I'm sorry.
Senator Rice, look, you need people who are willing to come to the state capitol to listen to efforts. How do they reach you?
I can be reached at Senator. Let me see. Senator, gotta get my own. Send Rice at njleg.org.
Senator Rice at NJ.
Not Senator, one word. Send Rice.
SendRice.
SNRICE at njleg.org.
Send Rice, SENRICE at NJLEG.org.
ORG.
Got it. All right, cool. Pastor, close us out.
Can I say one quick thing before Pastor closes us out?
I'm sorry, Ryan. Then go ahead.
Sure. So I just wanted to, Roland, you raised, and I appreciate you raising at the top that we are a male-heavy panel. And for most of this conversation, I've been thinking a lot about Professor Linda McDonald Carter, who is a lawyer and a professor here, does amazing work. And she has been a big proponent of ensuring that we understand sort of civics curriculum and the way in which government works and democracy works, and how using our vote through the ballot box also requires us to make sure we hold officials accountable. So I just wanted to shout her out because this is the work that she's done, encouraging us to do, and it plays a pivotal role in ensuring that we hold elected officials accountable.
All right, then. Appreciate that. Pastor, close us out.
Hey, first, let me just, Roland, once again, give you a shout out, brother. Your commitment, your conviction to Black people, the Black community is profound, prophetic, and absolutely down to earth. We all have to give you a major hand. We also want to thank our audience. I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to be with us today, and I need everybody to follow us. We've had a fantastic discussion, but we got to move from discussion to activation. It's good to have conversation, but we also have to have activation. And so Roland has laid out how he's going to follow us with respect to this. We have had Mark to kind of give us a framework. The senator has really made a major point. Jacob definitely is out front in terms of the pain that he has suffered. And Ryan is with us 100%. And so at the end of the day, I just want to thank this entire panel. And I want to wish everybody a fantastic day. And I just want to say, this is not over. In fact, from my perspective, it is the beginning. We got energy, excitement. Let's go get this done. I want to close in prayer. With every head bowed and every eye closed, God our Father, we thank you today for honoring us with your power and with your presence. We thank you for the genius, the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding that you have anointed and blessed us with. We are grateful for our host today, our moderator today, who has made a commitment to come into New Jersey and help expose these things so that they're not hidden under a bushel basket, but to shine light on them. We thank you for the president and CEO of the National Urban League, Marc Morial, who has experienced a lot of this. He's a seasoned trooper, a general who has been on the battlefield. We thank you for Senator Ron Rice, who has committed his life to New Jersey and the people of Newark. And we're grateful for Jacob, that God led to start his firm, and for Ryan. And so we thank you for our executive producers who made this possible today. And God, continue to lead us and guide us. Empower our viewers today that they might spread the word and share this gospel. While we do believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ, we also believe in the economic gospel, where Jesus has said that I have come that you might have life and have life more abundantly. And so the discussion that we've had today is a component and a part of that abundant life that you desire all of us to have with decency and with dignity. In Jesus' name do we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Folks, thanks a lot. Y'all enjoy y'all Sunday.
God bless.
Thanks a lot, everybody.